In the summer of 2025, I went to the Oregon coast and stopped at a few antique and collectible stores, usually mom and pop shops, and I saw this hanging up on a wall inside one of the stores, and it was marked for $55. And I thought, that's pretty cool looking, even though it's plastic. But then I started to wonder about that handle that didn't look like it's reproduction. And so it looked like a mismatch. That handle did not match being connected to a plastic blade. And so I asked the owner, assumedly the owner, if I could take a look at it because I wanted to make sure whether or not it's plastic. The reason I thought it was plastic is because it looks too perfect. It's all smooth looking and no rust or anything like that. So I thought maybe it's some kind of a rubber or plastic that would flex. And when he handed it to me, I knew quickly that this was all made out of metal. And then I started to assume it's an alloy. So it must be one of the older reproductions. And with a small chance of it actually being antique. Very, very, very small chance, especially for that price. And most of the dealers know what they have, but he didn't know what he had. Well, anyway, I went ahead and took a chance to buy it. I think I even got it maybe less than that. I'm not sure. I forgot. I bought several things at the same shop, and I'm going to show you what has happened since I bought this. So after purchasing it, I went all the way down the West Coast through Hollywood, California, came back to Florida, and it's been about a month I've been home, and I started to take this thing apart and noticed it was held by four flathead screws, and I noticed the wooden shaft is very lightweight, so it's dry rotted. The moisture has evaporated over many decades or even more than a century. And then I noticed the shaft looks very antique looking, but it seems to be uniquely built for this weapon. And so at first I was thinking, well, somebody just broke this off of a table or a chair and stuck it on this modern replica. But then I realized, no, this is actually made for this weapon in particular. And so what I did is I got some paint stripper and I was assuming there was a thin layer of paint on top because it was kind of a gold color, and I could tell it looked like a modern spray paint, and that's what it was. But under that were several more layers of paint, and it got so ridiculous. It got down to the point where I determined there was actually thick epoxy, and I used a scraper to scrape the epoxy off in thick layers. It was an epoxy-like paint. So I kept scraping and scraping, and I think it was several millimeters thick. It was thick. All up and down the shaft, everywhere was just thick, full of that stuff, that kind of paint. And eventually I started to realize, for example, what you see here is what I started to see some pitting, and that's when I realized this could very well be an antique because of that pitting that's in there. And then as I kept getting deeper and deeper, it becomes evident that this is an actual antique artifact. I'm a little discouraged about how thin it is because that's indicative of a replica. So this still could be a replica. Probably if it is, it would be a very old, high quality replica, but still valuable. But at this stage, I think it is not a replica, and that's based on the extensive pitting. And I also found out that this is a magnetic metal. This is not an aluminum alloy that replicas are usually going to be made out of. So this is some kind of a steel. And also a big tipping point that leads me towards this being genuine from the maybe 17 or 1800s is that when I do a Google Lens search of this image, there is not one in the entire world that comes up. If this were a replica, there should be several of these images on the internet. So if you search, let's say you do a screenshot at home and you do a search for this and try to find it, you won't find this exact design anywhere. And so the paint thinner, the paint stripper, I've tried two different kinds. I've tried going with the low fume type, and it's just so slow and painstakingly to remove this paint. And so I'm going to try another one to try to get the rest of this off. Although if I leave it on, it does make it look unique. Because that kind of keeps it looks like it's supposed to be there, but actually these are brass bristle scrapes that I made trying to get this off. So I'm scraping it with a brass brush to do the minimum amount of damage and to keep it intact. So this was probably found in a field sometime this century, but had been corroding over a long period of time. It has 2 holes on each side, and then you put the wood shaft in there. So far, I don't find any marks on it, and I don't expect to find any. Sometimes they put a year date on it, and it may have had one or it may have one, but it's going to be very difficult to find that. And that's one reason why I do want to go ahead and strip the rest of the paint or epoxy off. You can see right here how thick that paint is, and this is after I scraped most of it off. It's acting like an epoxy instead of a paint. So I think they were using something like JB Weld or whatever to fill in all of these pits, ignorantly not realizing they are actually when they were doing that, they were actually trying to make it as modern as possible, which is the opposite of what you want to do with one of these. That was so whoever redid it was professional with the category of paint, but a complete idiot regarding the category of antiquities and value of items. They should not have put any paint on this at all. If anything, a rust protectant, and that's what I'm going to do, is when I get all of the paint off, I have a Eco rust protection. This is good stuff. I like it. And then I'm going to coat it with that, and then further try to determine what this is. It seems to be a Revolutionary War tomahawk or something similar to that. If you know what it is, please let me know. Again, I don't like how thin that is, but it is metal, and the top blade is thicker, so I'm happy about that. I just don't like how thin that is right there. I think if this were beveled and thicker, it would be a more interesting piece. And the same thing with that right there. I don't know why they made this so thin. Maybe because they didn't want it to be so heavy, because if it's heavy, it's hard to tote this thing around. This could have killed one or more people or horses during the Revolutionary War. It may have provenance, but I have no evidence. There's no way I can get that evidence. And so, as far as proving it's a genuine artifact, it's just going to have to be for the reasons I mentioned. I think the combination of being metal, very heavily pitted, and I can't find that exact design anywhere on the internet, is a very strong indicator that this is a real thing. There are probably maybe a dozen of these around the world. Or maybe this is the only one. I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I mean, it looks like somebody went through a lot of trouble to make a cast for this. So I would assume many of these were made, because you wouldn't go through all that trouble to make a metal cast for just one of these. I don't think it was possible, but I really doubt it. Yep. So what do you think about all of this? What do you think it is? How old do you think it is? The value of it, well, when I bought it, it was probably sitting there for a year at $55, and because it looked like a toy, nobody bought it. And this is a really unusual, extremely rare thing to run into. But I come from a family, all of us, everyone in my family, my immediate family, has been heavily involved with this field of antiques. And so I've learned to be able to spot fakes and real things. And that's why, even though you saw in the picture, this looked so fake, because it was just totally loaded with a modernization of cover-up paint. But that shaft was a dead giveaway. It's worth looking at. I almost didn't look at it because I thought, surely that's plastic. But this thing here, although it just looks like a table leg or something, but even that seems kind of unlikely because of the way this is down here. You see, that's not flat. If it were a table leg, that would be flat, but it isn't. And it would be wider at the bottom than that usually. Not necessarily, but you think that would have felt on the bottom or something, or a hole in the middle where a felt tip was put on it. And then also for it to be thinned out towards the top so narrow, would not be in the realm of being a table leg. So I think this is the original hand shaft for this item. I believe this is going to be the original, and this could be from maybe, I don't know, I'm going to estimate around the year 1800 or earlier or later. So when was the Revolutionary War? I don't know. I didn't look it up before I made this video. So I just looked it up, and it was 1775. So this could be from the 1700s. That would be astonishing. That that I picked this up for $55 or less. But I am having to do a lot of work to get this paint off. This is not easy. It's a lot of scrubbing with a brass brush, and brass is going to take longer than something like stainless steel, but brass is not going to damage the metal like stainless steel might. Stainless steel brush will be faster, and but it will probably do a lot of scratching on that metal, which I don't want to do. Now, as far as these screws, did they have screws like that in the 1700s? I don't know. If they did, I guess they would be flathead like that. These are a little bit rusty. These may not be the original screws. There was one that was more modern, like it was kind of like this. And I looked through a bunch of screws to try to find one as close as I could to these other three. But I'm going to treat these with the rust protection and try to buffer off some of that rust on those screws. Because if I list this for sale, I don't know where I would do that. I'm kind of reluctant about eBay due to the fees are so high. But I could list it on eBay very high, and then Etsy for a little bit lower, and then Facebook Marketplace for even lower, like that. All three tiers of those, and then when it sells, remove it from the other places. But this is a dream for people who are, what do they call those? What's the name of that show? Not Pawn Stars, but the storage locker, whatever. No, storage finds. Oh yeah, Antique Roadshows. That's it. I never watched that show. Although with my personality, you would think I would, but I don't. I just don't watch it. But maybe I can call them up. This is an interesting story. They may be interested in doing a story about this one. I don't know. But I'm really excited about this. Based on the way it looks, I would say this is from the 1700s. That's just astonishing. The value of this could be in the many thousands, possibly over 10,000, but I'm not sure. Like I say, there's only one discouraging thing is the thinness of this metal here, and then it doesn't really have a lot of intrinsic designing on it, no markings, so that's going to hurt. And also an expert will possibly be able to tell that it's been messed with as far as doing an analysis on it. They may be able to tell that I have done something like cleaned it. And also this doesn't look that great, but I mean, my God, the 1700s, well, for it to even exist at all would be pretty amazing. All right, what are your thoughts about this?